"You're not essential, princess." That's what Chase said, loud enough for the entire conference room to hear, right as he leaned back in his leather chair like he was the king of some corporate Game of Thrones spinoff. And for the record, I was already standing when he said it. But when he added that little smirk and that got him hand wave, like he was swatting a fly off his artisanal cold brew, I swear something in my brain just snapped. Everyone laughed, not uproariously, not from the gut. It was that awkward, nasal kind of office chuckle people do when they're just trying to survive a moment they know they'll replay in the shower 3 years from now. And then, as if the scene wasn't humiliating enough, he clicked the remote to the next slide like he hadn't just gutted me in front of 25 people. Slide read. New workflow leadership effective immediately. Under project compliance plus audit review. My name had sat on every org chart for the past 3 years, was now a shining, stupid, bold-faced Brandon Lewis. No title, no experience. Just Brandon, the same guy who once asked if our VPN had a gender. The same Brandon who once tried to invoice legal for bottle service because he said negotiating a club table is basically procurement. And me? I didn't even get demoted. I got erased. I stood there for a half second too long, just still, like my body was buffering. I was in my favorite navy blazer, the one I wore on big call days, the one that made me feel like I still mattered. I'd even put on mascara that morning, which is now probably halfway down my cheek. "Any questions?" Chase chirped. No one said anything. I felt all eyes flick over to me and then away, like I'd just farted in church. HR rep Stacy was staring so hard at her kombucha bottle. I'm surprised it didn't spontaneously combust. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. What was I supposed to say? "Hi, yes, quick note. Why'd you decapitate my career in the middle of a team meeting like we were on a reality show?" He moved on like I was background noise. "Brandon will be heading up the compliance audit prep going forward. He's got a fresh set of eyes, and he looked directly at me, no baggage. I don't remember sitting down, but at some point I was just in the chair, knees locked, hands pressed against my thighs like I was trying to push myself through the floor. My ears were ringing. I focused on the smell of the break room coffee someone brought in, burnt French vanilla and resignation. That was the thing about Chase. He was never cruel in the way you could report. Never a slur, never a slamming door. He weaponized charm and plausible deniability like he got it from a vending machine. Son of the CEO, golden boy from some third-rate MBA mill where his thesis was probably titled Disrupting Accountability. A vision. People didn't confront Chase. They orbited him until they fell into his gravity and burned out. After the meeting, I sat at my desk like a ghost. My calendar was suddenly empty, tasks reassigned, permissions revoked. The SharePoint folder I'd built from scratch for audit logistics? Locked. I watched my screen as my name disappeared from workflow after workflow like it was being exercised. Not a single Slack ping. Not even a pity emoji. Brandon walked by my cubicle munching on Cool Ranch Doritos, wearing Yeezys and a belt with skulls on it. "Hey Ash, what's the login for the vendor compliance portal?" he said, grinning like a dog that caught a squirrel. I didn't answer. Just stared at my screen until he shuffled off, muttering something about boomer vibes. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself under the fluorescent light. My reflection looked like a woman trying very hard not to scream. My jaw was clenched so tight it ached. I splashed water on my face, took a breath, and stared, not at the bags under my eyes or the way my lipstick had faded. I stared through myself, like I was digging for something buried underneath the rage and the hurt and the humiliation. And I found it. Resolve? That night, I didn't go home. I stayed late, real late. The cleaning crew came and went. The lights shut off automatically at 9, but I knew the motion sensor trick. I wasn't clicking around aimlessly, I was looking for something. Buried in my drive was a folder titled MISCSOPs under a subfolder called Draft Legal Review Q1. I'd started it months ago, back when whispers of a merger were still just coffee gossip. It held a single document that most people ignored. Operational Compliance Bylaws Addendum Draft. Most people thought I was just an overachieving checklist freak. They weren't wrong. I was obsessive. I did build redundancy trees for fun, but inside that draft was a clause, a role I'd proposed as a structural safety net in the event of a data breach during acquisition. A role with final sign-off on all operational integrity benchmarks. A role no one had activated. Yet, I read the file again. The role had a name, Director of Operational Integrity. Neutral, bland, hidden in legalese so dry it could sand a table. But there it was. Any acquisition, merger, or external compliance audit shall be subject to signatory validation by the designated Director of Operational Integrity, who shall retain autonomous approval authority over systems audit documentation submitted post-integration. And the best part? It had already been pre-cleared by legal, months ago. I'd gotten a sleepy VP to initial it back in April during a checklist alignment review. He thought I was being thorough. Tonight, I wasn't just being thorough. I was sharpening the knife. So yeah, Chase, call me not essential again, but remember this. Paper cuts don't bleed until you turn the page. I didn't cry. That's the part that surprised me. No tears, no dramatic breakdown in my Corolla in the parking lot. Just silence, like something inside me had been vacuum sealed. I walked out of that building with my purse slung over my shoulder and a half-empty Tupperware of soggy Cobb salad in my hand like it was any other Thursday. But I wasn't going home. Not yet. The fluorescent lights of the office bled into the empty street behind me as I doubled back through the side entrance, badge still active for now. My heels echoed like gunshots across the tile, and even the security guard didn't look up from his game of solitaire. I nodded. He grunted. Just two ghosts passing each other in a building built for egos much louder than ours. I didn't turn the lights on when I reached my cubicle. I didn't need to. Muscle memory guided me through login screens, authentication prompts, the usual symphony of multi-factor tedium. My fingers were already typing the file name before my brain caught up. Bylaws Addendum Q1 Draft Final V4 BDocX. It wasn't just a file. It was a Trojan horse, and I had built it over the past 6 months with the kind of dedication people usually reserve for raising children or planning assassinations. At first, it had been just another late-night paranoia project, an audit clause here, a failover note there. But as the acquisition rumors got louder and Chase got bolder, I'd started shaping it into something sharper, something legally binding. The role I'd created, Director of Operational Integrity, was written like a boring appendix bullet point. It didn't scream power grab, it whispered due diligence. I'd embedded it under a section about systems compliance, tied it to ISO jargon, even referenced two GDPR rulings no one in our office could pronounce, let alone enforce. It looked like overkill. That was the beauty of it. Most people treat documentation like a paper trail. I treat it like a minefield. I scrolled to the section header, section 9.2, buried 36 pages deep, and reread the clause. My eyes scanned the words like they belonged to someone else. This role shall be activated upon the pending confirmation of acquisition or merger proceedings and retain autonomous signatory authority on all post-integration compliance checklists and operational data logs. The Director of Operational Integrity shall not be removed or reassigned without reattestation by legal and approval by both buyer and seller entities. No loopholes. No wiggle room. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of locking the door from the inside and swallowing the key. I opened HR's internal form system and started the clock. The timestamp mattered. I knew Chase would pull some kind of Houdini routine if he ever caught wind of this. But he wouldn't, not in time. HR didn't read filings. They sorted. The people who processed these forms were glorified human paperweights waiting for retirement. Position type, compliance/redundancy level, cross-functional signatory authority, Tier 1 initiator, Monroe, Ashley effective date, immediate pending digital signature. I attached the draft bylaws with the updated clause, flagged it for archival under policy review, pre-M and A, and dropped it into the document control repository. I even used the right versioning codes. It would show up in the system audit trail exactly as it should, as something that had been approved months ago, now being formally activated. Because technically, it was. The legal VP who'd signed off on the draft in April had done it after I brought him 2 cups of gas station coffee and a pile of low-priority compliance suggestions. He initialed the bottom of each page like a man swatting flies, thinking I was just another middle manager with control issues and a Pinterest board full of flowcharts. I printed the confirmation page. I didn't need it. I just liked the sound of the printer spitting it out. It made it feel real, tangible, like I was folding my own parachute in the middle of a plane nosedive. The name on the document, Ashley Monroe, Director of Operational Integrity, looked plain, underwhelming, but I could already see it. Chase's face when someone slid that page across a mahogany boardroom table and asked him why he hadn't consulted the compliance signe before moving forward. I could already hear the silence that would follow. I didn't do it to kill the acquisition. That would have been petty. No, I wanted it to go through. I wanted Chase to stand in front of those buyers and sell them a fantasy while sitting on top of a landmine only I could defuse. I wasn't here to play whistleblower or hero. I just wanted the chance to be the scalpel they forgot they left inside the body. As the printer cooled, I stared out the dark window. Somewhere in the city, Chase was probably laughing at his own joke in a rooftop bar, sipping mezcal he couldn't pronounce, and pretending to understand leverage ratios. Brandon was probably at home Googling what audit trail meant while dribbling salsa on his Xbox controller. And me. I was sitting in the quiet hum of an abandoned office, weaponizing every ounce of my humiliation into something far more dangerous than a confrontation. A paper trail. They think silence is surrender. But I've learned that silence is just strategy in compression mode. And tonight, I stopped being a process babysitter. I became the process itself. Friday morning, I showed up to the office with a smile that didn't reach my eyes and a Starbucks cup that didn't have coffee in it. It held chamomile tea because caffeine makes my hands shake, and I needed precision. I needed my pulse slow, my mind still, and my rage harnessed like a wild horse with a bit between its teeth. Because today was the day I was going to quietly make myself the most important person in this company, without a single soul noticing. Chase had sent a chirpy team-wide email the night before, excited to welcome Brandon into the compliance saddle, like we were cowboys playing make-believe in a sandbox of regulations. He CC'd the entire C-suite, not me, not even as a courtesy. Fine. I got to my desk at 7:13 a.m., early enough to beat most of HR, late enough that I didn't look desperate. I wore a gray sweater and slacks, nothing loud, nothing memorable. I was going for invisibility, the corporate equivalent of wearing camouflage. I had 3 hours before the department reshuffle went live in the system. 3 hours to lace the trap. Step 1, finish submitting the paperwork I'd staged the night before. That meant filing the operational integrity activation form via the internal portal, tagging it to the appropriate policy cluster, and using the correct metadata labels to push it into archive status before anyone could flag it for review. Everything needed to look retroactively compliant, like it had always been there, just a dot on a dotted line. Step 2, update the key personnel log. This was the golden key. Every major vendor, auditor, and buyer required a document outlining who held decision authority on process integrity. It was a living document, updated quarterly. No one ever looked at it mid-cycle unless there was a merger or lawsuit, which meant I had exactly one shot to sneak my name in before the next compliance sweep. There it was, KPP Rolling List 2024 Q2 Final. I downloaded the Excel file, added a new line beneath legal, and typed, Operational Compliance Oversight. Monroe, a Director of Operational Integrity. I didn't bold it. I didn't highlight it. I left it boring, gray on white, lost in a spreadsheet jungle no one voluntarily enters unless bribed. I saved the file, exported the PDF, and uploaded both to the document control system under the tag Historical Retention, No Review Required. That tag was like a cloaking device. Anything dropped there didn't trigger alerts. Barry from Legal had set it up years ago so he could hide old vendor NDAs without having to explain why we'd once contracted a consultancy run out of a gas station. Next, I opened Outlook and sent a memo. 2. Policy updates at West Hill Internal CC. Nobody subject. Activation Redundancy Compliance Layer Appendix C Body. Per Q1 Legal Addendum Review, activation of previously cleared operational integrity role is being finalized as part of merger prep standardization. No approval required. See attached for historical signature. A. Monroe. I attached the PDF and the original signed page Barry had marked up with chicken scratch initials and the world's most unenthusiastic checkmark. Then I marked the message low importance. People ignore emails marked low. They assume they're just someone covering their ass, and I was. Mine. I hit send and exhaled. My finger hovered over the mouse for just a second longer than necessary, like I was sealing a vault. I stared at the screen. Everything was logged, timestamped, archived, all of it legal, all of it boring, but very, very binding. Then I did something almost ridiculous. I opened a new calendar event and titled it Integrity Lock and set it to recur monthly, just a silent reminder to myself that, somewhere in this circus of performance bonuses and ping-pong tables, I had carved out a foothold of real control. A bureaucratic snare camouflaged by bullet points and dusty folders. Around 9:45, Stacy from HR wandered by my desk holding a protein shake that smelled like sadness. She paused, blinked at me like she wasn't sure why I was still here, and said, Hey Ash, you'll get an invite later today for your transition out of the compliance team. Nothing dramatic, just standard process. You okay, of course, I smiled, just finishing up some handover cleanup. She nodded, not really listening, already checking her watch like the word handover was a sedative. HR people don't look for fires, they look for exits. 10 minutes later, Chase strutted by in a baby blue button-up, high-fiving Brandon like they'd just closed $1 million deal instead of repackaging my life's work into a frat party group project. Chase didn't even glance at me. That's what made it perfect. Because the best kind of trap is the one they walk into smiling. By noon, my access to the compliance drive was revoked. SharePoint notified me I'd been removed from several folders. I got a generic "We appreciate your contributions" email from Brandon with 3 typos and an attached PowerPoint titled Process Flow V2 that included a meme of a dog wearing sunglasses under the caption. Audit this. It didn't matter. Because my version, the one with legal bite and digital trails, was already embedded in the system like a tick in the company's spine. I left the office that day not as someone defeated, but as someone holding a detonator only I could see. The skies were gray, the sidewalk wet from a half-hearted rain, but I felt lighter than I had in months. You don't need a corner office to win. You just need to know which signatures matter, and who forgot to ask for one. The thing about Chase was that he didn't just fail, he failed loudly. And with a grin, the kind of man who would unplug a server because the blinking lights were distracting, then high-five Brandon for hacking the matrix. Within 1 week of him taking the reins of the compliance audit, I had already counted 7 procedural missteps and at least 1 ethics violation. Not that anyone noticed or cared. If it came with a slideshow and a joke about adulting, Chase could get away with murder. I kept quiet. I kept everything. It started with the vendor onboarding meeting. Chase had decided he didn't need procurement sign-off because we've used these guys before. He invited one of the buyer's analysts to sit in, some poor guy from Jersey who looked like he hadn't slept in 4 days, and then proceeded to misquote our data retention policy 3 times in a row, using a laminated chart he made in Canva. When the analyst politely pointed out a discrepancy in the backup protocol dates, Chase waved it off with, "Yeah, that's just lawyer speak. We don't actually do that." I wasn't in the room, but I was on the calendar invite. I'd seen the video recording posted later to our internal library. Twice, so I started logging. Not internally, hell no. Internal systems get audited. I used my personal Proton mail, created a folder called Dog and Pony Show. For every meeting, every document, every poorly worded email, I saved a timestamped screenshot and backed it up to 2 separate cloud drives. I also used a little site called Evidence Taggercom, a public hash tool used by journalists and whistleblowers. Everything I uploaded got an immutable blockchain timestamp. No edits, no erasures. Call it overkill. I called it insurance. The next firestorm came Tuesday. A Tier 1 client flagged a data mapping issue during their annual review. A file had been exposed to a deprecated integration, meaning it could have leaked into an unsecured environment. Not a breach, but close. Close enough to merit escalation to the compliance lead, which was supposed to be me. Instead, Brandon, God help us, responded with thanks. We'll circle back post-closeout, should be chill. He then closed the ticket without any action and sent the client a bitmoji of himself giving a thumbs up. 3 hours later, that client's VP of Risk sent a scathing email to our CEO, the buyer's risk officer, and our entire C-suite. The subject line was a single word, unacceptable. I saw the email pop up in the feed and clicked faster than my brain could process. What followed was a digital flamethrower of polite corporate fury. The client referenced non-adherence to contractual SOPs, a disturbing lack of procedural escalation, and my personal favorite. This undermines trust in your organization's capacity to steward confidential assets during transitional review periods. Translated from corporate, you've got a clown steering the plane and we're not dying for peanuts. The CEO forwarded the email to Chase with a one-liner. What is this about, Chase? He replied, looks like a misfire. Brandon says it's handled, all good. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into anyone's office. I just saved every word, every attached file, every calendar invite. I printed the Bitmoji, labeled it, Exhibit B Brandon Response to Critical Client Risk. Every night I stayed up just a little later. Organized it all into a folder tree so precise it could survive a congressional inquiry. I even started naming my evidence batches by day, like seasons of a show no one wanted to watch. Episode 3, Brandon Forgets What a Firewall Is. Episode 5, Chase Tells Buyer's Counsel We Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Episode 7, HR Sends Cake Emoji After Audit Delay. The worst part wasn't the chaos. It was that no one saw it for what it was. Everyone around me just adapted, like frogs boiling slowly. People who used to fight for protocol now shrugged. One manager said, Chase is rough, but he's family, like nepotism was a medical condition. Others joked that I should get used to the new style. I nodded, smiled, took notes. Even legal had gone quiet. Barry, the VP who'd signed my addendum, now mostly roamed the halls with AirPods in, whispering into his phone like he was auditioning for a spy thriller. He gave me one look in the hallway after the client email blew up, one long, dead-eyed glance, and then ducked into a side room. I didn't bother asking what it meant. I just tagged it Witness Behavior A1 and moved on. Meanwhile, Chase strutted like the whole operation was going exactly as planned. He posted on LinkedIn that he was driving key ops synergy amid dynamic restructuring. Got 148 likes, one of them from the CEO. I added it to the folder, every piece of it, because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to rage. I wasn't going to give them anything emotional to pin on me. I was just going to document the fire while they toasted marshmallows in it. Let them laugh. Let them think I was gone, obsolete, too soft to fight. They forgot one thing. Soft things bend, but they don't break. It came in at 10:42 a.m. on a Wednesday. Just a harmless-looking email in Chase's inbox with the subject line, Preliminary Consolidated Review Checklist West Hill Acquisition. From the buyer's external counsel. No exclamation marks, no emojis, just a PDF attachment and a 6-line body that ended with, please return the completed checklist by end of week. Compliance dependencies highlighted. To most people, it looked like paperwork. To me, it was prophecy. I wasn't CC'd. Of course not. My name hadn't appeared on a meeting invite in over 2 weeks, but I saw the notification flash on Brandon's screen as he strutted past my old workstation, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, eyes scanning a sneaker raffle while Outlook buzzed in the background like a neglected smoke alarm. And then 2 desks down, I heard it, his voice. Yo, is this checklist thing important? He asked Chase, not even whispering. Chase didn't look up from his phone, probably boilerplate, just ping it to Maya or whatever. The intern, Maya. God help us all. I waited until Brandon returned to his desk, spent 7 minutes composing a Slack message to a girl he matched with on Tinder, and finally dragged the checklist into an email with the subject line legal thing you need by EOD, I think. Then he hit send and promptly returned to Googling, can you get a DUI on a Segway? I waited 10 minutes, then I moved. I didn't have access to Maya's inbox, but I did have access to the shared drive where all pre-acquisition docs were supposed to be uploaded after review. It was a graveyard of mislabeled PDFs and version conflicts that could make a grown compliance officer cry. I searched by timestamp, found the file, and opened it. Westhill Pre-Acquisition Consolidated Review Checklist Confidential. 97 pages. 5 appendices. 4 cross-reference tables. A font that looked like it had been designed specifically to lull executives into skipping entire paragraphs. And there it was. Page 63. Section 9.2. I felt the breath catch in my throat like a held cord. Operational integrity signatory, buyer-side dependency clause, all post-merger audit trails and infrastructure validations shall require signatory attestation by the current Director of Operational Integrity. See Key Personnel Appendix. Version 4B. This signatory authority cannot be reassigned retroactively or circumvented through proxy approval. Deal progression is contingent upon this role's active validation. Black and white, quiet, final, my name, my trap, right there in ink. I scrolled further. The appendix was included. Version 4B, the one I'd updated. There in font size 10 under the Compliance and Infrastructure block, Monroe A. Director of Operational Integrity, active, Maya wouldn't see it. She'd skim for boxes to check. Brandon wouldn't notice unless someone spelled it out with memes. And Chase, he was too busy updating his LinkedIn headline to driving strategic synergies during transitional M and to read past the subject line. They weren't just blind. They were willfully blind. The kind of arrogance that thinks paperwork is ornamental, that roles are suggestions, that protocols are just something middle managers used to feel important. I knew then, with the kind of bone-deep certainty you feel before an earthquake hits, that this was it. The moment I'd built everything for. The knife wasn't just sharp, it was positioned perfectly. All that was left was time. I took a screenshot of section 9.2, then one of the appendix, archived both to my encrypted drive, added them to the folder titled Final Hour. It was almost beautiful because they didn't just miss it, they delegated it into oblivion. A critical legal requirement handed off like trash day to a barely paid intern still learning where the bathroom key was. And me? I was watching from the shadows they shoved me into, waiting, breathing. Already counting the seconds until they walked into the boardroom and someone with a law degree and a voice like a scalpel, would read that section out loud. I could almost hear it. We require attestation from the Director of Operational Integrity. And Chase blinking like a man trying to find the door in a room with no windows. I closed the file and sat back in my chair, listening to the office around me. The click of keyboards, the hum of fluorescent lights. The little laugh Chase gave when Brandon made some joke about asset consolidation being a vibes thing. They had no idea. This wasn't a checklist, it was a detonator, and I was the fingerprint on the trigger. Friday, 5:07 p.m. The office was already half empty. The marketing team had slipped out early for team building happy hour, which mostly meant 2-for-1 margaritas and Instagram stories about empowerment. The devs were in their corner, headphones on, fading into the blue glow dusk of dual monitors. And Chase? Nowhere. Probably on the golf course schmoozing with the buyer reps, grinning like he just personally invented the merger. I didn't expect a goodbye party. Hell, I didn't even expect a Slack message. My calendar had been scrubbed. My email forwarding was already set up to route anything with my name to a shared inbox labeled Operations Overflow. I was being vacuum sealed out of the company like a ghost removed from a group photo. Perfect. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small flash drive I'd kept taped under the lining of my laptop case for 2 years. Not because I was paranoid, because I knew systems fail, logins glitch, but paper trails with teeth, they live forever. I logged in one last time, heart steady, fingers still. The screen glowed faintly in the late-day dim, casting long shadows across the beige cubicle walls and my half-drained mug of stale tea. The badge reader pinged a low chime as I re-entered the restricted access zone, compliance admin panel. Still active, but not for long. I moved quickly like muscle memory had taken over. Open, shared governance archive drill down, acquisition protocols signatory requirements 2024 Q2M and a locate. Active key persons appendix, final revision, edit permission. Enabled. I hovered for a moment over the blank signature line under Director of Operational Integrity. It was the only field still empty. Everything else had been filled in by Meyer earlier that afternoon, God bless her sweet, oblivious heart. She ticked every box, verified every email, double-checked every version number, except this one. The signature only I could provide. I opened the encrypted certificate file from the flash drive. My full name, digital seal, hashkey verification. All legally binding, all quietly certified in a little noticed compliance pilot from Q1 that Barry and I had finalized over vending machine coffee. Drag, drop, attach. The screen blinked once, then again, certificate attached. Signature verified. Timestamp 5:09 p.m. 10/18/2024. Status complete. The portal closed behind me like a bank vault. There was no confetti, no applause. Just the subtle weight of finality, like the last piece of a loaded puzzle clicking into place. A silent, airtight checkmate. I navigated to my system profile and took one last look at my name in the org chart. Still listed, still active, still invisible, not for long. Before I logged out, I did one final thing. I created a calendar event, recurring, monthly, anonymous, no invitees, just a title, OI, signatory attestation review required, and a link to the archive directory, set for every first Monday. Just enough to trigger curiosity from the next person who stumbles into that folder, just enough to start a chain reaction, just enough to keep me in the building long after my badge stops working. I closed the laptop gently, like tucking in a child for the last time. No slamming, no flourish, just closure. There were still a few people scattered around the office, but no one looked up as I walked past the break room. Stacy from HR was microwaving something that smelled like sadness. She glanced at me, then glanced away. Maybe she remembered I was leaving. Maybe she didn't. Brandon was playing ping pong with himself in the hallway, earbuds in, paddle in one hand and a la croix in the other. I walked past him like smoke. And Chase, still a no-show. Still convinced that the world bent toward him naturally, like sunflowers chasing light. Let him think it. Let him stand in that boardroom next week, confident and clueless, until someone reads Section 9.2 out loud and watches the blood drain from his face. I didn't need to be there to see it. The satisfaction wasn't in the explosion, it was in knowing I'd already lit the fuse. When I stepped out into the cool air, the sky was streaked pink and bruised. Rush hour buzzed faintly in the distance. I looked back at the building just once. It looked smaller somehow, like a box I'd finally outgrown. I walked to my car, got in, didn't turn the engine on right away. Just sat there for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, listening to the soft tick of the cooling engine and the quiet hum of a world still moving forward. No farewell email, no parting words, just a sealed document, a single name, and a clock already ticking. By midnight, I'd be locked out. But by Monday, the door wouldn't open for them either. The boardroom was the kind of sterile sleek that tried too hard, glass walls, brushed steel everything, chairs that looked ergonomic but felt like punishment. It was Monday, 9 a.m. sharp, and the smell of overpriced cologne and overconfidence was already choking the air. Chase sat at the head of the table like he'd just closed on a Manhattan penthouse with Monopoly money, legs crossed, smile dialed to smug. His Rolex caught the light every time he shifted, which was often he wanted you to see it. The CEO, Harold, a man whose best leadership decision had been fathering Chase, sat beside him, hands folded over his belly, wearing his "I told you this would work" face. He hadn't stopped grinning since the buyer's team walked in. I wasn't at the table. I was 3 rows back, seated quietly behind the glass partition in the observation section, next to a woman from investor relations and a guy from IT who looked like he'd rather be dead than wearing a tie. I wasn't invited. But thanks to a friendly nudge from someone on the buyer's side, someone who'd noticed my name on more than a few archived filings, I was approved to observe. They even gave me a guest badge. The moment the buyer's counsel opened his binder, I could feel the charge in the room shift. He was tall, soft-spoken, with the kind of voice that didn't command attention so much as demand silence. Every page he turned echoed like a verdict. Section 7, Pre-Merger Infrastructure Review. Confirmed, he said, glancing at the checklist, marking with a slim silver pen. Section 8, Third-Party Compliance Disclosures. Acknowledged. Chase leaned over to Brandon and whispered something. Brandon chuckled like they were already counting their stock options. Then the buyer's counsel flipped the page and paused. Section 9.2, he said, reading slowly. Operational Integrity Signatory. He didn't finish the sentence. He looked up. The pen stopped moving. A whisper of silence fell across the room like the thermostat had dropped 10 degrees. Chase tilted his head, confused. Something wrong? The counsel didn't answer immediately. He glanced to his associate, an older man with a folder of his own, flipping quickly to a tab. I saw the moment his eyes widened just a hair. Lead counsel cleared his throat. This section states that attestation is required from the Director of Operational Integrity before we proceed with validating the system's integration package. Chase blinked. Oh, yeah, that was merged into legal. We, folded that into Brandon's oversight when we restructured. The counsel didn't blink. I'm sorry. Who? Brandon, Chase said, motioning to him like a proud dad introducing his kid as spelling bee. He's handling all the compliance stuff now. We reassigned the original lead a few weeks ago. Everything's been streamlined. The counsel didn't look at Brandon. He looked at the binder again. That's not how it reads here. Harold's smile twitched. I think there's a bit of confusion. That role was procedural, internal. It's been dissolved. No, said the associate, finally speaking. He tapped the appendix. Per the filings received last Friday, 5:09 p.m. timestamp. The roll was activated. Signature attached. Personnel listed as Monroe A., Director of Operational Integrity. Active, not dissolved. The sound in the room changed. It wasn't noise, it was lack of it. The kind of stillness where you can hear people thinking, scrambling to rewrite the last 20 minutes of their lives in real time. Chase's face went slack. Ashley? He said it like it was a question, like he'd just remembered I existed. My name, spoken aloud in that room, was like a pin through a balloon. No pop, just the sudden realization that all the air had gone out. I stayed seated, said nothing, just stared at the back of Chase's head and watched the sweat rise under his perfect haircut. The counsel tapped the page. We require sign-off before we proceed. It's not optional, it's a compliance hold. Brandon made a noise halfway between a cough and a whimper. Chase looked at the CEO, now resembled a man watching his retirement beach house float out to sea. No one moved. The buyer's counsel gently closed his binder. We'll pause here until the documentation is fully attested. And just like that, the deal stopped breathing. The buyer's counsel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That's the thing about certain types of people, they don't argue, they pronounce. Like a judge handing down a sentence he's already rehearsed. He opened the binder. Slowly this time, like he was handling something fragile. The entire room leaned forward without realizing it. The moment had turned viscous. You could feel the panic start to slither through the gaps in Chase's swagger. Let's just be thorough, the counsel murmured, flipping through to the appendix like it was just another Tuesday. He turned the page. Then another. Then he stopped. Key personnel, Appendix 4B, he said. The page made a soft F-whip as he rotated the binder so that the room could see. He tapped his finger once lightly, right under the line that mattered. Director of Operational Integrity Ashley Monroe. Active. The name sat there like a ghost at the table, inked and time-stamped. Alive. Brandon made a small choking sound. Chase just stared. Eyes narrowed, lips parting, as if squinting hard enough might somehow change the letters on the page. He looked like a magician whose rabbit had just bit him. We reassigned her, he finally managed, voice cracked around the edges. She's not active. That's outdated. She doesn't even work here anymore. The counsel turned his head slowly, with the kind of precision that suggested he already knew the answer to the next 5 things he was about to say. Did legal dissolve the position formally? He asked. Harold jumped in, trying to take the wheel. He folded it under broader compliance as a redundancy measure. Nothing structural. Our team, did you submit a removal notice with counter-signature from the listed officer? Silence. The counsel's associate quietly flipped open a secondary binder. Nothing on record, no removal, no reassignment filing. Roll is still active as of final timestamp Friday evening. Then, said the lead counsel, calm as a guillotine blade, your deal is void pending reattestation by the active integrity officer. The room didn't explode. It imploded. The air pressure dropped. No one breathed. Brandon blinked like he was trying to reboot. Harold's mouth opened and closed twice. Chase turned a shade of white normally reserved for lab coats and gravestones. We can fix this, Chase said too fast, the words tripping over each other. It's just a technicality. We'll get someone too. She doesn't want the job, she. Mr. Caldwell, the counsel interrupted, using Chase's last name like a scalpel. You cannot override a listed signatory on a federally monitored compliance role without procedural removal. The clause is quite clear. And unless Miss Monroe attests the documentation herself, your system validations are incomplete, which means the deal cannot proceed. Harold leaned back, fingers laced across his stomach, but the smug had finally drained from his face. Color was gone too. He looked like a man who'd just realized the floor beneath him wasn't a floor, just a very wide trapdoor. Can we bring her in? He asked, voice quieter now. Chase shot him a look, panicked. She's not going to play ball, Dad, the word echoed. The buyer's legal associate tapped again. This wasn't an accident. The documentation is airtight. Bylaw addendum references compliance protocol updates from Q1. Signature trace is clean. Internal HR form was filed correctly. Timestamp is uncontested. I sat still in my chair, hands folded in my lap. My guest badge glinted under the fluorescence. I didn't blink. One of the buyer's advisors, a man who hadn't said a word the entire meeting, leaned in and whispered something to the lead counsel. He nodded. Is Miss Monroe present? The counsel asked. All heads turned. I stood, quietly, not dramatically, not like a movie, just stood. Chase's mouth dropped open like he'd just seen a ghost with a grudge. The buyer's counsel offered a gentle smile and gestured toward the table. Miss Monroe will require your review and signature to proceed. If you're willing, of course. I stepped forward as Chase shrank back in his chair like a man watching his own house catch fire. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I walked slowly toward the table, not for dramatic effect, because I wanted every step to be intentional. My heels didn't click. They landed. There's a difference. You could feel the tension pull tighter with every inch I closed between me and the people who'd once erased me like a typo in a bad memo. Harold tried to stand, maybe out of some half-dead reflex of civility, but halfway through the motion he realized how stupid it would look. He froze mid-rise, awkwardly halfway between gentleman and gut cramp. Chase stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, blinking fast. Brandon, gone, quietly slipped out 5 minutes ago after whispering something about needing to pee to no one in particular. The buyer's counsel gestured to the empty chair beside him. Miss Monroe, he said, voice level, we appreciate you making time to join us today. I sat, opened the binder, flipped past the first 5 tabs without looking. I already knew where I was going. Page 63. Section 9.2. My claws. My foothold in the side of the mountain they tried to shove me off. Chase leaned forward, voice dry. Ashley, if we could just, I didn't look at him. I'll need to review all compliance attachments, I said calmly. Specifically, anything added after October 1st. The ones sent post-reassignment weren't submitted through the proper portal. They'll need to be revalidated. That was my first sentence in the room, and it landed like a meteor. The buyer's counsel nodded immediately. Understood. We'll provide the full post-handover audit trail. As per the bylaw structure, you retain autonomous authority for operational compliance. Take your time. He slid the binder toward me. One simple motion. But to Chase, it might as well have been a guillotine blade. The air turned sharp, cold, the kind of silence that makes even the HVAC unit seem too loud. Harold rubbed the bridge of his nose. The head of investor relations whispered something into his phone and left the room without a word. And Chase stood, or tried to. One of the internal HR directors, Margaret, sharp bob haircut and nerves of titanium, rose from the back row and quietly stepped beside him. She whispered something I didn't catch, but I caught the look on his face. It was the look of a man who just realized the safety net was decorative. Are you kidding me? He hissed, low enough that only a few of us heard it. This is political. This is insane. Margaret didn't flinch. She just gently placed a hand on his arm and said, barely audible, we need to discuss a personnel matter. The phrase hit the air like an ice pick. Now, he barked. Now, she repeated. I kept flipping. I didn't turn my head as Chase was quietly escorted out of the boardroom he thought he'd built. His footsteps were heavy, louder than mine had been somehow, each one a little tantrum echoing off glass and chrome. The door didn't slam, it just clicked shut. Cold, final. I took a breath, just one. Then I flipped to the back of the binder, opened the pen loop, and clicked it once. The buyer's counsel slid a single sheet across the table. System integration sign-off operational integrity validation. One line at the bottom, one blank space. I read the document slowly, scanning every sentence like it owed me money. Every misstep, every shortcut, every corner they'd cut while I was sitting in silence, building this very moment. I made a few notes in the margin. Circled 2 date discrepancies. Drew a neat red arrow toward an appendix that had been labeled wrong. No anger, just red ink and precision. Then I signed. Initials, date, seal, done. The buyer's counsel nodded. Thank you. And that was it. Not fireworks, not a standing ovation. Just closure. I pushed the binder slightly forward and stood. Still silent, still steady. As I walked out, I caught Harold's eyes for a split second. He looked like a man watching his legacy spring a leak he couldn't patch. And I thought, not cruelly, just clearly, you gave your son a title. I gave myself a blade. I stepped into the hallway and didn't look back. Didn't need to. Bureaucracy is boring until the knife in it is sharpened, and I'd spent months honing it in silence. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.